Hello, this is WellArmedWithTacos. Welcome back to Stories from Sector 10, the Warhammer podcast that I host. It is currently Wednesday as I record this. By the time you all see this, it will be Thursday. I have waited far too long to record this. I've just been pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. So I can only vaguely remember the details of this match. But I have time to do it now, so I'm just going to do this. This shouldn't take very long. I have two stories. This will be the first one. The second one, I will have a little bit more detail, but not by much. This first game was done on Saturday. This was a 2-on-2 game, which I don't get to play as much as I wish I would anymore. We played a 2-on-2, and one of the players agreed to play a 2-on-2 only if we introduced some house rules for, what's the term? Sorry, my mind's a blank. Alternating, there we go. Alternating player turns. So, instead of a 2-on-2 situation where it normally is, where both players go for one side, he wanted to do one player for one side, then the other team has one player for the other side, and then it switches back until the game's over. And I agreed to try it. Having now tried it, I think it's actually just a worse way to play 40k multiplayer games. It's unfair. It kind of ruins how you determine the first blood. It kind of ruins how you on your own team have to determine who goes first and stuff like that. It's just not a very good system, but I did try it, and it slows the game down quite a bit as well. Instead, because all of a sudden each side has two moving phases instead of everyone just politely moves their stuff in one go. So it definitely slows the game down, and I don't think it worked very well. But we tried it. I was playing Space Marines, and my partner was playing Space Marines. That's kind of why we teamed up, because I always think the same faction on same faction is boring. So I said, if we're going to do a team game, let's just have me and the other Space Marine player team up, and we did. Recently, I've felt more inclined to start playing Space Marines again. I intend to try to buy some more Space Marine miniatures coming up soon, but haven't done so yet, so it's still just my current army that I have available. And our opponents were a combination of Tau and Tyranids. We decided on doing 50 power points per player, or 100 power points per side. And this is kind of the thing that cost me and my partner the game. We lost as the Space Marines. We got effectively tabled. We didn't let them go all the way with it because my partner threw him a towel before I did, and at that point it's just me trying to fight off two players, so I ended up just having to call it two. But we got effectively tabled, and if we hadn't called it, we would have actually gotten tabled. But the problem with this match was I kind of knew it was over before it even started, and I know that sounds negative, but here's why. We only had 50 power points to spend per player, and both of us, logically so, made sure we wanted to have battalions, because in this edition, having stratagems is really, really useful. It's more useful than the latter of not having stratagems. So we both decided to do stratagems, and as Space Marines or any other quality over quantity army, it gets hard to play at lower point costs, and admittingly for Space Marines, 50 power points is a bit of a low cost. I can't say about what my partner had, but I know for me, when I write a list, I always start with whatever detachment I'm bringing. So if I'm bringing a battalion, or somehow if I'm bringing a brigade, whatever. But I always get the point cost for my, say, battalion, and then I allow myself to buy stuff from whatever's left, because you have to meet the bare minimum first to get the points. So my bare minimum battalion which was a captain, an Emperor's Champion, who is 4 points. He's cheaper than any of the other alternatives. And it was 2 units of tactical squads and 1 scout squad for my troops. That was my Crusaders, not tacticals, but that was my 2 HQ, 3 troop choice bare minimum. That alone was literally 35 power points. In a 55 power point game, or not 50, in 55, in a 50 power point game, 35 of my points was barely meeting the battalion. That meant I had 15 points left over to spend on actual things I might have wanted that weren't just my bare minimum. And that really hurts when you're playing Space Marines. Normally you can kind of deal with it, but it reflects much more clearly in a 2-on-2 game. Because my partner had to do the same thing. I don't remember specifically what he brought, but I know he met a battalion, and I remember he brought a 10-man veteran vanguard unit with jump packs, and he said that sucked up most of his points, and I believe it. That was probably all the rest of his points he had left over. But when we were deploying, I looked at the board and saw that we basically had nothing but Space Marine infantry. And from that point, I knew we were screwed. Because if you're playing regular Space Marine infantry, not Primaris infantry, in this edition of 40k, you're really kind of hurting yourself, and we did in this game. The only way Space Marines can thrive and survive right now is either by bringing Primaris stuff or by bringing a lot of Space Marine vehicles. Or alternatively, the heavier infantry like, say, Centurions or Terminators. At such a low power point cost, we couldn't do any of that. So we were mostly troop choices, tacticals, and Crusaders. And unfortunately, that's not how you win in 40k. I kind of knew it was going to be over at that point, and things played out pretty much how I expected them to. The Tau player did what, honestly, is probably not a terrible idea. I mean, it comes with its own problems, but the Tau player chose not to bring a detachment. He brought a patrol because he said, "I'll just take the 3 points for getting the patrol." But he spent his points bringing the stuff this Tau player typically brings. He brought a Ghost Keel. He brought a Riptide. He brought a Devilfish. He brought 2 different commanders. He brought all the big stuff he could bring. The Tyranid player in a 15-point game brought the Swarmlord with Hive Guard protection. He brought his infamous drop pod with 23-shot gaunts in it, which means they come out and shoot 60 dice from a 9-inch deep strike, which is basically kill something. That's how my partner's veteran vanguards went out in one swoop, because it doesn't matter if you have a 3-up armor and a 3-up invul, 60 dice will make you go away. He brought that, and he also brought the named character, the Death Leaper, and targeted one of our captains with it. So basically, on both sides, we had monstrous creatures, and we had nothing but the special weapon and the heavy weapon in our squads to deal with them. And obviously, that's not enough. It just isn't enough. So we pretty much got rolled. I brought a Dreadnought. That was the only vehicle I had. I had a Dreadnought and a Land Speeder, actually. The Land Speeder mostly spent the game parking on the objective for points and firing its range 36 heavy bolter and its range 48 missile launcher. So it was fine being parked. Took a couple of shots, didn't go anywhere. The Dreadnought went from not wounded to completely blown up from one round of the Riptides burst cannon fire, because that seems to be my luck with Dreadnoughts. This Riptide player has now dubbed his Riptide the Dreadnought Slayer, because he did the same thing to my Death Dread when I played Orcs against him. Just one-shot it with only the one weapon system from the Riptide. Yeah, we pretty much got stopped because tactical squads can't fight off monstrous creatures. That I shouldn't have to say that. that should just be a truism. Tactical squads can't fight off monstrous creatures. And we played against 2 opponents who brought monstrous creatures, and all we had were troop choices. And that isn't how that works. So my scouts with sniper rifles were trying to do what they can, but it wasn't enough. Oh, the tenured player also brought Jane Sealers and a Broodlord. So, yeah, that happened too. So, my Crusader squads ended up having to charge Jane Sealers and just ended up... I killed some of them, but I ended up losing that fight. Mostly, I think, because of dice rolls. But, yeah, it didn't go well. I think we might have made the right decision still, bringing the 2 battalions, but I wish my partner had... been more willing to use our stratagem points, because I'm going to be honest, between our 2 groups, the only ones that had a chance of doing anything were the veterans, because they were the only thing an equivalent PowerPoint cost to our opponent's big PowerPoint cost things. I told my partner, you just need to be sucking our stratagem point cost dry, because we made sure we had all these points to use, and he was just a little too sheepish about using what he considered our points. I just wish he had been using a little more of those. But if we didn't want to take battalions for all the point costs, we might have been able to play a very different game if we had brought things like Centurions or Aggressors, Whirlwinds, Predators, Vindicators, all that stuff. And I would have brought some of those if I had those. I plan on getting some Whirlwinds soon and some Thunderfire Cannons as soon as I can get my hands on them. But we didn't have that. We just mostly had tactical squads and Crusader squads, and that doesn't get the job done against monstrous creatures. So, we lost. It was an enjoyable enough a game. I mean, I didn't hate it. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back with another story. See you guys later.